Right now, without thinking about it, you know roughly what time it is. Maybe you glanced at your phone this morning. Maybe you checked it 12 times before lunch. The average person looks at a clock over 150 times a day. We are so saturated with time that we feel anxious when we don't know it. Late, early, behind, ahead. Your entire life is organized around numbers on a dial that someone else invented. But here's what nobody tells you. For the vast majority of human history, those numbers didn't exist. Not just clocks, the concept of hours, of minutes, of a day divided into equal measurable chunks. None of it existed, and humans didn't just survive without it. In many ways, they lived more naturally than we do now. So what did they actually do? How did anything get built, hunted, harvested, or organized when nobody knew what time it was? The answer dismantles something you've believed your entire life. Let's start with the number that puts everything in perspective. Homo sapiens have existed for roughly 300,000 years. The mechanical clock was invented around 1300 AD. That means for approximately 298,700 years, your ancestors woke up every single morning with no idea what time it was. And somehow, civilizations rose. Pyramids got built. Armies marched. Harvests fed millions. All of it without a single minute hand. The question isn't how they survived without clocks. The question is what they used instead. And the answer is everything around them. The oldest clock in human history is the sky. Before any tool was invented, the human body was already tracking time. Your circadian rhythm, the internal biological cycle that tells you when to sleep and when to wake, runs on almost exactly a 24-hour loop. It is synchronized to light. When sunlight hits your retina in the morning, your brain registers the start of a new cycle. When light fades at dusk, your body begins producing melatonin and pulling you towards sleep. You didn't learn this. You were built with it. For hundreds of thousands of years, this internal clock was the only clock anyone needed. You woke with the sun. You worked while it was up. You slept when it went down. The day had a shape that your body already understood. But as human societies grew more complex, the body alone wasn't enough. You needed to coordinate, to meet, to plant at the right moment, to prepare for winter before it arrived. So humans started reading the world around them with extraordinary precision. Ancient Egyptians divided the day using shadow clocks as early as 1500 BC. A vertical stick planted in the ground, called a gnomon, cast a shadow that moved predictably as the sun crossed the sky. They divided daylight into roughly equal segments and called them hours. But here's the part that gets strange. Those hours weren't equal the way ours are. In summer, when days were long, an hour was longer. In winter, when days were short, an hour was shorter. Time itself was elastic. It stretched and compressed with the seasons. The idea that an hour is always exactly 60 minutes, the same in December as in July, is a modern invention. For most of human history, time bent to fit the world, not the other way around. The ancient Romans took this further. They divided the day into 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness regardless of the season, which meant their hours changed length every single day of the year. A Roman summer hour was nearly twice as long as a Roman winter hour. Citizens didn't find this confusing. They found it natural. Because time wasn't an abstract grid imposed on reality. It was a description of reality itself. How much light is there right now? That's what time it is. Before any of these tools existed, the most reliable timekeepers weren't objects at all. They were bodies, human and animal. Roosters crow at dawn with extraordinary consistency, triggered by the first hint of light on the horizon. For thousands of years across dozens of cultures, the rooster was the alarm clock. Not a metaphor. An actual biological mechanism that entire villages organized their mornings around. Cows need milking at regular intervals. Sheep move to pasture at predictable times. The rhythm of the farm was itself a clock. You didn't need a device to tell you it was morning. The animals told you. And then there were monks. If any group of pre-industrial humans was obsessed with time, it was medieval Christian monks. Their entire spiritual practice was organized around fixed prayer times called the canonical hours. 7 specific moments in the day when all activity stopped and prayer began. Matins before dawn, lauds at sunrise, prime, terce, sext, none, vespers, compline. These prayer times structured the entire medieval European day long before mechanical clocks existed. Monasteries used water clocks, hourglasses, and complex sundial systems to track these hours. And because monasteries were often the most organized institutions in medieval communities, their bells became the timekeepers for everyone nearby. The monastery bell didn't just call monks to prayer, it told the baker when to start the ovens, it told the blacksmith when to open his forge. It told the market when to open and when to close. For centuries, the church bell was the most accurate public clock most people ever experienced. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because all of these methods, the sun, the stars, the animals, the bells, they shared one critical feature. They were tied to something real, something happening in the physical world. Time was not a number. It was an event. It was sunrise. It was the shadow reaching the 3rd mark. It was the bell from the hill. You didn't check the time. You noticed the world. Then in the 14th century, everything changed. The first mechanical clocks appeared in European towers around 1300 AD. They didn't have minute hands at first. Those weren't added for another 300 years because nobody needed that level of precision. But these clocks did something no timekeeping tool had ever done before. They ran independently of the sun. They ticked the same in winter and summer. They divided the day into identical, equal segments that had nothing to do with how much light was outside. For the first time in human history, time became abstract. A number, a grid. Something that existed apart from the world itself. Historians have documented what happened next, and it was not immediately welcome. Workers in medieval towns resisted clock time fiercely. For generations, laborers had been paid by the task. You were done when the work was done. It didn't matter how long it took. A field got plowed, a wall got built, a barrel got made. Time wasn't something you sold. It was just the background against which life happened. But with mechanical clocks came a new idea that would reshape civilization, the idea that time could be owned, divided, bought and sold in equal units. Factory owners in the early industrial era didn't just install clocks, they used them as weapons. Workers who showed up late were fined. Hours became currency. And suddenly, the way humans related to time changed at a fundamental level. Time was no longer something you lived inside. It was something you owed someone else. Sociologist E.P. Thompson wrote about this transition in his landmark 1967 essay on time and work discipline. He argued that the shift from task-oriented time to clock-oriented time was one of the most profound psychological transformations in human history. Before clocks, people worked in natural rhythms, intensely when the task demanded it, slowly when it didn't. They took long breaks in the heat of the afternoon, what we'd now call a siesta, because their bodies told them to, not because a schedule permitted it. After clocks, every minute had a price. Idleness became a moral failure. Being unproductive with your time was not just wasteful, it became shameful. And we are still living inside that transformation right now. The anxiety you feel when you're running late, the guilt of an unproductive afternoon, the compulsive clock checking 150 times a day that you do without even thinking about it. None of that is natural. None of it is ancient. It is a psychological pattern installed in the last 700 years by a piece of machinery that divided your life into units small enough to sell. Your ancestors for 298,000 years before that had none of it. They woke when it was light. They worked until the task was done. They ate when they were hungry. They slept when it was dark. Time was not something that happened to them. It was something they moved through, guided by the sun, the stars, the animals, and their own bodies. Everything they needed to know about time was written in the world around them, and they were never once late because late didn't exist. Tonight, you'll probably check your phone before bed. You'll calculate how many hours of sleep you'll get if you fall asleep right now. You'll do the math, feel vaguely anxious about it, and lie there watching the minutes tick past. And somewhere deep in your biology, a system that spent 300,000 years syncing itself to sunlight and seasons will be quietly waiting for you to just let it do its job. It still knows what time it is. It always has.